Hello friends, and welcome back to Jim's EV Adventures. Gotta have the coffee to keep me going today because I've been struggling with this video for about 3 days. It's tough. We're gonna be doing a battery electric vehicle comparison, specifically the IONIQ 5, to 5 different internal combustion engine vehicles in the same class. We're gonna do a comparison of the cost of ownership through 100,000 miles. We're gonna do a comparison as to how many pounds of CO2 each one of these vehicles emits over the lifetime of that 100,000 miles. We're going to talk about what it takes to make a gallon of gas. We're going to talk about quite a few things that's probably going to raise the ire of the lesser-minded ICE zealots, those who think internal combustion engine vehicles are the bee's knees. Well, I got news for you. If you're still driving an internal combustion engine vehicle and you're not even considering a battery electric vehicle, this channel is not for you. This is a channel for intelligent people who want to learn something and want to know more about the electric vehicles that are starting to take over our roads. Yeah, they're just a small percentage now in the United States, but around the world, it's changing. And if we don't get on board, we're going to be left sitting in the dust with our thumbs in our noses, and we're going to look like fools to the rest of the world. So sit back, let's talk about these 6 different vehicles today and what their impact is in the world. Here we go. So as always, I'm going to take you through my sources of information. Starting up right at the very top, we're going to talk about the CO2 per kilowatt hour by fuel type as given to us by the Energy Information Administration here in the United States. And I would say they probably know more about that than all of us combined. Then we're going to talk about the CO2 that it takes to manufacture an EV battery. More importantly, we're going to talk about the CO2 it takes to that is manufacture 1 gallon of gasoline. And then we're going to talk about the cost of vehicle maintenance. Now, I have consulted with the service departments of all the makes and models mentioned in this video, and I've averaged out the prices for a synthetic oil change and brake jobs for all 5 ICE vehicles based on 10,000 mile intervals on the oil and 50,000 mile intervals on the brake jobs. Now, your EV should be good to go through 100,000 miles unless you're a complete idiot driver. In that case, this doesn't apply. Starting right off the top, I want to talk about the energy it takes to manufacture 1 gallon of gasoline. Crude oil extraction and transportation requires about 5.3 kilowatt hours of energy per gallon of gas. Now, all this energy is not electricity, but it can be turned into electricity. And that's why it comes up to 5.3 kilowatt hours. It's actually in the neighborhood of 18 to 20,000 BTUs. The refining process takes another 3.5 kilowatt hours per gallon. That's about 12,000 BTUs. Not all of that is electricity. Some of it is the fuel that they're actually burning in the refining process to make the refined gasoline. So it's both electricity and thermal energy. Then we're going to talk about the distribution to the gas station. That's about another 0.7 kilowatt hours per gallon of gasoline, and that covers pipeline transport, trucking, and pumping fuel into storage tanks. So the total energy required from well to the gas pump is 9.5 kilowatt hours of total energy per gallon of gasoline. And bonus insight here, 9.5 kilowatt hours is enough to power an electric vehicle like the IONIQ 5 for around 25 to 30 miles, and it could be more. This is the energy it takes to bring 1 gallon of gasoline to the internal combustion engine car fuel tank. Now, we're also going to talk about the total cost of ownership, and what it does not include in this case are tires. Both the battery electric vehicle and internal combustion engine vehicle will both require tires over that 100,000 mile period at about the same interval depending on the style of tire, the type of tire, and your driving styles. All of this is dependent on a lot of variables, so I'm not including those. Makes it even on both sides. Coolant is the same way. You have coolant loops to keep your electronics cool in a battery electric vehicle. You have coolant in your radiator to keep your engine cool because, hey, you're burning stuff. You also have cabin air filters in both the battery electric vehicle and internal combustion engine vehicle, so I'm not including those. I'm not even going to include the intake air filter because, hey, I'm throwing the ICE vehicle folks a bone. Nah, no big deal. So what are we going to compare? I've already mentioned that we're going to compare the IONIQ 5, but we're going to compare it to 5 vehicles in the same class, which include the Honda CR-V, the Toyota RAV4, the Volkswagen Tiguan, the Mazda CX-5, and the Subaru Forester. So sit back, relax, here we go. Let's go through these comparisons, and we're going to spend a little bit more time on the Hyundai IONIQ 5 versus the Honda CR-V because the information is repeated going through into the next 4 cars after that. So on the Hyundai IONIQ 5 compared to the CR-V, 114 miles per gallon equivalent on the IONIQ, 30 miles per gallon on the Honda CR-V. Miles per kilowatt hour, 3.9 miles per kilowatt hour on the IONIQ, 3.2 miles per kilowatt hour if you turn that into kilowatt hours for the CR-V. Now this is where it gets interesting. Total cost of ownership through 100,000 miles, that's 160,000 kilometers for the rest of the world. $45,625 is the MSRP on the IONIQ, and $36,428 is the suggested MSRP on the CR-V. Same, pretty much equivalent models and trims. But hey, wait, there's more. The energy it takes to run through 100,000 miles is going to cost the IONIQ owner about $2,145, whereas it's going to cost the CR-V owner $11,300 in gasoline to go 100,000 miles. Oil and brakes, none for the IONIQ because it don't need them, but about $1,300 for the CR-V. So the total outlay for the IONIQ compared to the CR-V is $1,257.21 less through 100,000 miles. But the kicker here, the real kicker here for me, is the cost of energy per mile. 2.1 cent per mile or 10 times more at 11.3 cent per mile for the CR-V. And that's going to apply for all of the internal combustion engine cars. It costs you roughly 5 times as much to put energy into that car to move it from point A to point B. Real simple. CO2 is the next big thing. What is the environmental impact through 100,000 miles, including the manufacturing? One of the things I did was I took the pounds of CO2 to manufacture just the car, not the drivetrain, just the car. For both is about 16,500 pounds of CO2. And I'm going to throw the ICE owners a bone here again. I'm only going to add the CO2 to make the battery for the IONIQ 5, and I'm not giving the drivetrain anything on the internal combustion engine vehicles. So 10,088 pounds. But here's a little bit of a spin for you. The fact of the matter is the total pounds of CO2 to manufacture a battery today is really about 2,500 to 3,000 pounds. Manufacturing techniques have improved that much in the past 5 years, and a whole lot in the past 15 years. It's incredible. But the bottom line is the total CO2 for an IONIQ is about 49,215 pounds compared to double that in the CR-V, 107,371 pounds. Keep that number in mind. As we go into the RAV4, roughly the same information on the miles per gallon equivalent and kilowatt hours per mile. But here's the thing. The manufacturer's suggested retail price is a little bit less, or actually a little bit more for the RAV4. So you're getting about a $2,300 win on the IONIQ 5 through 100,000 miles. Cheaper to run the IONIQ 5 for 100,000 miles. CO2, roughly the same as it was for the CR-V. Go to the Tiguan now. Let's look at the Tiguan. 26 miles per gallon on the Tiguan. And I'm using combined MPG, MPGe to make it fair for both. Suggested retail price, a little bit less, still about $2,400 cheaper to run the IONIQ through 100,000 miles. And about 72,000 pounds less carbon through 100,000 miles. Going into the IONIQ 5 and the Mazda CX-5, 26 miles per gallon again, but you'll notice this thing has a much cheaper upfront cost at $33,960. $12,000 cheaper, but yet through 100,000 miles, it's over $500 cheaper to run the IONIQ. Amazing, isn't it? Again, 72,000 pounds less carbon. And we'll move on to the Subaru Forester next. Subaru Forester, about 29 miles per gallon. It's just slightly more expensive than the CX-5. But still $1,328 cheaper through 100,000 miles for the IONIQ 5. And also about 61,000 pounds less CO2. That's going to wrap up the direct comparison. Next, we're going to go into the Hyundai IONIQ 5 electricity mix calculator and a CO2 comparison with the CR-V. Let's take a look at that. So as I mentioned, we're going to look at the electricity mix calculator and a CO2 comparison for the CR-V. Why am I doing this? Because every single time I talk about energy used to power an electric car, some brainiac keyboard warrior wants to point out that, hey, your electric car runs on fossil fuels too, so it pollutes the air just as much as my gas car does. You're not making less CO2. Well, they're half right. Some of my electricity does come from fossil fuels, or as I like to call them, carbon-based air-polluting poison gases. But that still makes the person making the comment half wrong. And when it comes to CO2, being wrong only 50% of the time is still dangerous and quite stupid. So here we go with some facts, some hard facts for the keyboard warriors. If my IONIQ 5 were powered by pure coal, which gives 2.25 pounds of carbon per kilowatt hour, then we would be getting 0.575 pounds per mile of CO2 into the atmosphere. Natural gas, fuel oil, solid waste, hydropower, wind, solar, all of those things are shown there for your edification. But the real thing you want to know is how much would it actually cost? If the IONIQ 5 were purely coal-powered, 87,722.5 pounds of CO2 would be put into the atmosphere from burning the coal to make the electricity to make my car go. And that is still almost 23,000 pounds less than the CR-V burning its gasoline. Natural gas, 58,000 pounds less. Fuel oil, 43,000 pounds less. Solid waste, 30,000 pounds less. Hydropower, 78,000 pounds less. Nuclear, solar, and wind, almost 81,000 pounds less. Period. These are the numbers. These are the facts. Any third grader can do this math. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Go out and try it yourself. But wait a minute, I hear somebody screaming. Your EV weighs 1.5 times as much as the ICE equivalent. And I would have to say, again, third and fourth grade math proves that wrong. The IONIQ 5 weighs 4,425 pounds, slightly more than 2 tons. The Honda CR-V is slightly less than 2 tons, but when you put a fuel tank of gas in it, it's over 4,000 pounds. And the IONIQ 5 is only 11.28% heavier curb weight than the Honda CR-V. 20.56% heavier than the RAV4, 10.96% heavier than the Tiguan, 12.52% heavier than the CX-5, and 17.2% heavier than the Forester. The IONIQ 5 is not even close to 1.5 times heavier. This is a summary of the basic math that an average fourth grader could figure out. Period. Easy peasy. 1 + 1 = 2. 3,926 times 1.5 would make this car weigh almost 5,500 pounds. It don't. It's not even close. So that myth is destroyed. Take it to the bank. Hey, but wait a minute. EVs brakes pollute more than the ICE equivalent because they're heavier and they put off more brake dust. Let me get another sip of coffee on that one. No, they don't. Not even close. First and foremost, 80 to 90% of the braking that any electric vehicle does is regenerative braking. They don't get into the brake pads at all. Secondly, if you look at the maintenance interval requirements for all 5 of these beautiful internal combustion engine vehicles, pun intended, you'll find that you're going to have 2 brake jobs through 100,000 miles, which means you're using brake pads putting off brake dust. These are just called facts. Can't help it. You're just going to have to take it to the bank because they're as good as gold. Simple. You're polluting more with brake dust in the internal combustion engine vehicle than you ever will with an EV. Now we're going to get into my favorite part of this video. It's a warning to all keyboard warriors who want to argue. Listen carefully. Listen very carefully before shooting off your mouth in the comments. Number 1, before you jump behind your keyboard and type out a message about something you think you know, do your research. Back it up with scientific analysis, math, provable experience, something other than your opinion or a scene from Landman, and we'll talk and we'll discuss it like adults. Otherwise, just keep your comments to yourself. Go find another channel. Number 2, watch the entire video. The same thing applies to those who don't watch the entire video. And number 3, please stop thinking that you are super smart. There are very few people on the earth who are really and truly smart beyond question. The chances that you are one of them are 1 in 333,333. And if you want to prove that you're really smart to me, break out your Mensa membership as proof. That's what it's going to take. So friends, that's going to wrap this video up. I appreciate your time and trust. I hope you've been able to glean something out of this, and at least you can point those who want to argue about the internal combustion engine superiority to this video. They cannot disprove anything that I've put in this video because it's backed up with scientific evidence and factual information. And if they want to argue, I'm not going to play chess with pigeons. All they do is crap all over the chessboard, knock all over the pieces, and then strut around like they've already won. I'm not going to listen to that. So if you put a comment like that in my comments section, not only am I going to ignore it, most of the time I'm just going to put, hey, stupid, go somewhere else. Real simple. I don't tolerate foolishness very well. I have no tolerance for it. 0. So thank you again for your time and trust. Please remember to subscribe, share, comment, like, ring that notification bell if you want to know when I've uploaded something new. More importantly, share this video with someone who's sitting on the fence. This is factual information. It's going to help them make a better decision. If you're going to buy a new car, buy one that's going to cost you less through 100,000 miles. And I'll see you guys out there somewhere or along that route between point A and point B. So take it easy, everybody. I'll see you all real soon.